live.
Hey, community. Welcome to another Tuesday education stream. You got SparkBrian here.
SparkThomas.
And I will be running you guys through how to make a good-looking inventory system. This will be part one because I don't think we'll be able to get through everything in just 1 hour. So instead, this time I'm going to focus on the aesthetics of it. And Thomas will be here to tell me if I'm doing bad things.
Yeah, tell you how ugly everything looks. And
then tell me what questions people have along the way. So let's jump into tests so I can show you what it looks like. Let's move this a bit. Okay, so I have my character right here. He's just got the default third-person adventurer brain on. I hit right bumper, and we jump into this inventory mode. I can kind of twirl my character around, and I have 4 things in my inventory currently. So I got this sharp pointy thing, which is just his sword. I got this rusty chest plate. I got an eagle helmet, and then I got a bucket head helmet type thing. I don't know, the Furious Little King inspired me with like bucket head type things. And the cool thing is you can just hit A again to add and remove this stuff. And this is sort of the previewer in inventory. This is something very standard you see in most RPG type games. Really, any game with an inventory. You'll kind of see your character here. You can rotate them around. You can add stuff to them. You can see how that stuff looks like on them, kind of wherever they are. And I actually, this bucket's not perfect because his hair is still sticking out from the back of it.
Just has a really bad calic.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking from experience. So.
All right, so I'm going to walk you through, and then we jump out of it. And so the thing I won't be covering is jump out of it, and I'm back to my normal self. I don't have that stuff equipped, and the different buffs and stats that would come with each of those items. Because that will be part 2. Part 1, we want to focus on today is the beautification part, the part where you can make this nice looking inventory, look nice and pretty. And then part 2 will be we'll cover at a different time the nitty gritty of like taking all that inventory stuff and actually applying it to your character in game.
Yeah. See, I like how you're starting actually with like kind of the baseline and like the aesthetics a little bit. At least when I am creating something. I enjoy it a lot more if I kind of give myself that baseline and like the actual viewing of it, right? So like the actual inventory menu and things like that, and it kind of gives you a starting point and inspires you like, oh, this is the functionality I haven't built in yet, and then you have to go back and do it. Because I think a lot of people sometimes just want to get all the code done right away and then beautify it later.
Right.
And I'm kind of more of a kind of do one thing, kind of beautify it, do another, and then kind of iterate on do it together simultaneously. It's more fun anyway for me that way.
Yeah.
Especially the aesthetics part, kind of take your mind off of it. So if you want to just spend some time adjusting vectors on your displayed things on screen, you can do that as opposed to trying to figure out all the crazy logic. So
exactly. I enjoy the beautification process also to start out with. So what I'm going to do is this is all the stuff I had already, and I'm going to kind of recreate that over here. I like doing it that way because if I mess up, I have the stuff that works over here, so I can always reference that. So here's how you want to set up a nice looking inventory in your game. You want to basically create a different area, probably off your map, something that you can really put a nice design behind. Because you're creating another version of your character here. And actually, I'll jump into test again. Realized I turned this brain off. So before I actually really do build everything, let's jump into test again. Let's come up here just so I can show you something. So you can see my character in the background. They're kind of occluded a tiny bit, so maybe I'll come a bit closer. But I didn't really put this in a great place because I have my character kind of back there. What you want to do with your inventory system is you actually want to create a different state of your character somewhere else, just so you can have a nice background behind it. If you look
you
at
dress it up, right? Make it like a kind of dressing room.
Actually, one creation that takes great advantage of that is creation Disdain, which is by community member Corey Stellar. And Disdain has a kind of separate section in the world that actually has like a really nice hero shot of the main character for the inventory. And that's what you want to sort of do. So for this inventory system, the nice looking inventory with your character, the basic setup you need is you need your camera. You need a logic cube for where your character is going to be spawned. So this is the logic cube that will spawn the placement of the character. Then you need a logic cube that will be in charge of all of the actual inventory stuff. So this will be in charge of kind of the inventory selection. All right, so inventory selection. The other thing I like to do is color coding is a nice thing. So I like to color code my logic cubes this way. I like to do red logic cubes for anything that deals with my player. So the inventory selection deals with my player. Then any logic cube that deals with UI, I like to color that blue. I don't know why. I just choose blue. So I'll just have a blue logic cube for UI. And this color coding is just really useful if you kind of stick to something. So like you look through your world, you see a blue logic cube, you automatically know, okay, this is doing something with UI. It really helps kind of segment stuff out for you. So this is what you need. These 4 things are what you need for your custom inventory. A logic cube for where your character is spawned, the camera that will be looking at them, the actual inventory selector logic cube, and then a logic cube that deals with UI. I actually won't be adding stuff in here, though. I'll be using my past UI thing, because I don't think people want to see me spend 15-20 minutes making the pretty UI for this. So you just need these 4. And let's go back to my other ones. Let me just make sure I turn this guy off again. Bring it back to false. Cool. All right, so I'm going to steal this UI brain here. If you're curious how I did this UI, we'll be sharing this eventually, probably after part 2 we'll be sharing this. But here's my UI. So the first thing I'm going to cover is how to actually get into your inventory. So to do that, we want to have some sort of button press. Like, what do you press to actually go into your inventory? Here, we're going to say when right bumper is pressed, then we go into our inventory. And what we want to do is we want to toggle a Boolean. And ask me any questions people are asking in chat or comments they're making. Just ask me. Feel free to let me know what's going on there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to create this global Boolean called inventory. So when right bumper is pressed, this global Boolean inventory is toggled. To quickly recap, a global Boolean means any global variable means it's a variable that applies to every single item in your world. If it doesn't have a global behind it, this only applies and is set for this one object. So then we want to create another page. We want to call this active. And once global inventory is running, so once right bumper has basically been pressed the first time, then we are going to call this page active, which would be this page right here, blank right now. We'll be adding stuff to it. And then we will also eventually be adding code for when no longer global inventory. When global inventory is done, then something is going to happen. So this just kind of sets up the inventory itself. Now what happens as soon as our inventory gets activated? That's what this page deals with. So the first thing we want to do is we want to deactivate the brain of our global player. Backing out, going over to our player. So we have our player right here. This guy right now has the default third-person adventurer brain. The only difference is under once, I have global player equals me. This is setting this object variable to equal to this guy so we can reference it across the world. Something that I recommend everybody do for the world. Basically, almost no exception. Just if you have a single player game, set a global player object variable, it'll be so much more useful to refer to this as your player throughout, rather than using like an in-world picker to choose your player. So anyways, very first thing we do is we deactivate the brain of our player. Then we want to create a new version of them. That's the version that we'll be previewing. The reason why we want to create a new version of them is therefore whatever they're currently wearing, whatever they currently have equipped, that's what's going to appear in the inventory. So that makes it so that, if they've equipped new armor, then they're going to be showing. So rather than having kind of a different version in the inventory, we'll always have the current version themselves here. So to do that, we are going to set another global object variable. We're going to call this player preview. So global player preview equals create global player at position, and then we're going to grab this logic cube because this is the position they'll be created at. So this is just in one line, creates a new version of the player and then assigns that new version of the player to this object variable called player preview. The next thing we want to do is this player preview, we want them to be facing towards the camera. So no matter what way your character was facing before you create a new version of them, we want them always to be facing towards the camera. So you just want to do that, you want to set their forward, and that just means where are they facing forward. So they are facing forward in the same direction as the logic cube that they are spawned at is also facing forward. So this logic cube, great way to always see where something is facing forward. Select the object, go over to rotate Y, and wherever you see the point of that, the green little cursor thing or selector thing, and the little arrow around it, that is that's the forward-facing part of this character. And that's great. You can also look at, what's the upward-facing thing. Just go to rotate Y. That's where up is. And then where is, I believe that would be left. Yep. Yeah, so that's where left always is. So you can really quickly always see for an object where it's forward-facing, where it is facing forward. Okay. So we've created this player. We've made it face the same direction as the logic cube. We then want to... This player we've created is going to have the same exact brain running on it as our main player. So we want to deactivate their brain so they're not running extra stuff like a camera, things like that.
I would have forgot about that. I would have taken one test to be like, oh no, he's still doing jumping around and stuff.
We also want to make it so we're going to be attaching a bunch of stuff to our character. That means we don't want our character to move that much. We don't want them to be doing stuff like yawning or moving around because we're going to be setting very specific positions. So I want to also set my pace to be super low. We don't want my pace to be 0 because if you have a pace of 0, that means your characters can't move at all. We want it instead to be, let's set a pace. Let's go over to, why do I have equals? So appearance pace equals 0.001, like super low but not 0.
No.
And
so why do you not use 0?
Because what I want to do is I want my player to turn.
Okay.
To turn around, and if their pace is set to 0, that means they can't have any movement on them whatsoever.
Gotcha. So it won't allow you to rotate it.
Yeah, so it won't allow you. It won't. Well, you can rotate it in different ways. I just find it's a bit better to. I mean, easier, not better. Easier to do it this way.
Okay.
The next thing.
Some really slow idle animations.
Really slow. Like it'll take you probably a minute to start getting to an idle animation, at least.
It's a very slow knee scratch.
So the other thing we want to do is activate the brain of our camera here. So let's talk about this camera. This camera is where it'll be viewing the inventory. So in here, in this camera, we want to put a first-person camera on it. And also, to make things pretty, I love depth of field. And I'm going to set a near blur depth of just 1 meter because we're going to be pretty close. and then a focal depth of, let's say, 4, because we want, like, very soon after the character, things to be blurred out. Now this camera, we don't want it always to be running. We want it actually to be only running when our inventory is selected. So default, we're going to go into properties and turn brain is active to false. And so let's just review here. So we kind of create our player, set their forward, deactivate their brain, set their pace, and then finally end with activating our camera gizmo. We want to basically go through the reverse of this when we're done. So when no longer global inventory, the first thing we want to do is deactivate the brain of our camera gizmo. Then we want to destroy our global player preview that we've created. And then we'll end with activating the brain of our global player again. So we'll kind of end with this. We'll go, once the inventory is done, we stop that camera running, we destroy the preview player, we activate the brain of the regular player again. So before we go any deeper, let's go into test mode, see how this looks. And I think just for these purposes, I'm just going to turn off my UI brain.
Yeah, good question from Charge My Laser. Difference between the no longer tile or false?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Why am I saying when no longer global inventory? Instead, I could be saying when global inventory is equal to false, right? You can say that. So biggest reason why I don't want to do this, global inventory is equal to false, is because as soon as this Boolean global inventory equals false is equal to false, all of this stuff will keep on running every single frame. So it's just going to always deactivate the brain of my camera gizmo, always destroy whatever the global player preview is, and always activate the brain of my global player. So you actually won't really see a difference like when you're actually testing, because this stuff, like, there's no one else to destroy after the first person it destroys. Deactivating brain over and over again doesn't really do anything. Activating a brain over and over again doesn't do anything additional, like once they're deactivated and activated. But it's going to slow stuff down because you have 3 lines of code always running. So it's just always good, whenever you can, to limit code to only run for 1 frame or only run as much as it needs to. You really get to play the role of developer when you're making games in Project Spark. And one of those roles as developer is making your game run better. And you always want to look for, from the outset, ways to make your game run more efficiently. And so anytime that there's basically code that's running every single frame when it doesn't need to run every single frame, you should make sure to change that so that this code only runs for that 1 frame. So no longer global inventory. Basically, this stuff only runs for 1 frame. As soon as global inventory has become false, this stuff runs that 1 frame, and it's done. Because this is only looking for basically once something has stopped happening. Started 2 works the same way. So as soon as global inventory becomes true, this stuff runs for just 1 frame because it's as soon as it started, and no longer is as soon as it stopped. So this just limits it down to running only 1 frame. Very useful with, especially as you get more and more stuff happening in your level. The more you can constrain lines of code from running, just the better everything will operate. So jumping into tests quickly, let's just hit right bumper. And this is sort of our preview mode. Looks like I can change around the camera a bit to make it a bit closer to my character. Give it a nice hero shot. So you'll probably want to adjust around your camera so that it like fits with them good. This looks pretty good. Yeah. So that looks pretty nice. So the next thing is I want to incorporate my UI. So I'm not going to be walking through just how I coded this whole UI, besides a few key things. So I have my UI brain, and I only want this UI to run when I'm in the inventory. I should also probably call this inventory UI so that it's less confusing, because you probably will have a lot of different UI running throughout your game. So let's go into this brain. We just have a totally blank first page, And it says that as soon as global inventory has become true, it switches to the next page. And on the next page is all my UI, and as soon as global inventory is no longer running, then it switches to the previous page, which goes back to this page with one line of code. So this inventory system, I won't spend too much time on it. I'll reference it a few more times, but all I'm doing is I'm taking a bunch of variables that I'm setting elsewhere, and I'm just displaying them. So basically lines 17 to like 60 or so are just displaying different stuff. I have different lines being displayed. So I have like, if you notice, let's just jump to the test. If you notice, I have like a line for each place that a item might go in. So I'm setting those lines. I'm setting places for where all my items would appear, where all the images from my items would appear. I'll get to this selections part. That'll be the only part I'll kind of talk about. One quick thing that I wanted to talk about, which like saves me on time with UI, in case you didn't know this trick. With all my UI, I always set 2 vector variables. Vector variables store kind of vector points. And this is actually very useful for UI. And one of those is I set X, and that's equal to west in the world. So if you go to the position tile or folder, then you go to world relative direction and set west. And then Y is equal to world up, or basically upwards in the world. And again, you go to position, world relative, world up.
I would expect it to be east, because you'd go like east one positive that way and negative that way.
Oh yeah, you can use west and east. Yeah, west or
okay.
east, and then you just have to flip flop like plus or minus.
Gotcha.
But by doing this, then you basically can reference these to actually set on-screen positions, and that becomes really useful because what I like to do is I like to only set when I'm doing a list of stuff. So like I have my rows of lines, right? I only need to set the position of one line, and then for every other line, I just say that it's the same position as that one line plus y, or I actually minus y multiplied by a certain amount. So, like here are all my lines I have. I have my very top line, which I made orange, and it's at this screen position called lines, and every line after it is just at that same screen position minus y multiplied by
you're basically
whatever.
indexing them out.
Yeah, exactly. So like just really quickly with only setting kind of one vector variable here, you can just set them all at the same vector variable and just nicely say that they're a bit lower down without having to set a bunch of vector points. And I do that that allowed me to basically create all of these lines within a few seconds, because I just went through, copied and pasted, and then just increased the minus y multiplied by like 0.15. So like it goes 0.15, 0.3, 0.45, 0.6, 0.75, 0.9. So it goes on and goes on, and then that is what gives me this list with all the lines down.
Very cool. And they're all nice and evenly spaced and everything.
And I am using text variables to store object stuff. I'll get to that in a bit. Okay.
So before you move on real quick, Mescat wanted to point out line 31 in your UI brain and how you have to update a reference.
Do I? Let's see. What's line 31?
To the new one.
Yes, I do. Thanks for pointing that out, Mescat. I will get to that when I have to update it. Cool. I actually knew about that.
I figured.
Okay. So we go in, we have our character, we have our UI that I put through. So let's start doing the stuff where we have the objects come in. First thing I want to do is just like a nice simple thing is use right stick to rotate our character around. So I just want to simply say when right stick, do global player preview, go to movement, go to turn. And then, or turn, actually, you want to turn slowly, because if you don't do turn slowly, they move around super fast. So just by doing that, let's jump into test again, go in here, I'm using right stick, and now they're moving around, allows me to preview all the different sides of my character. Nice, useful, cool. So the first thing I want to do is I want my inventory items. in this part 1, I'm not going to really go through much of how to actually kind of dynamically bring in inventory items. We're just going to manually set our 4 inventory items. What I have this sword called Sharp Pointy Thing, this chest plate just called Rusty Chest Plate, this helmet called Eagle Helmet, and then this upside down bucket called Bucket Head. So I'm just going to, here in this tutorial, I'm just going to set each of these directly to be a global object variable, and they're just item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Later on, in the future, I'll show you how you can just update that, how you can update that after picking up something. But for now, I'm just going to set them this way. So we'll just go, the first item is going to be this, last time I think I had the Sharp Pointy Thing as first, so I'll just show kind of the difference, like how it's really easy to just switch up the ordering. So I'll just do helmet. Then we're going to say global item 2, that's 3. 2 is going to be equal to the chest plate. Global item 3 is going to be equal to the bucket head. And global item 4 is going to be equal to this sharp pointy thing. So I now have 4 items here. Let's just jump to the test, and we should automatically have these 4 items. So we'll have the 4 items listed here: Eagle Helmet, Rusty Chest Plate, Bucket Head, Sharp Pointy Thing.
And just by doing that too, so like the image is like getting called by once you have something
Yep.
set, it knows that.
So let's show you quickly how I'm doing that in the UI. Alright, so going here, I have stuff happening for every item. I have an image, I have the name of the item, and it's currently I'm just displaying how much it's worth, like the amount of gold that you would spend on it. You could obviously you could make it better by saying, its attack percentage or its defense, things like that. I'm just simply saying what it's worth. So what I'm doing is you can make an object's picture a text variable. This is something that I've seen some people start using, but more people can start using it. Is so the image of the item is just simply equal to that global object variable of item 1. So the item 1 global object variable is going to be equal to this text variable called item 1 image. Then the name of that object, just item 1, is going to be equal to the that object variable's name. You want to put it in parentheses too. It'll still run if you don't, but it'll give you this little error right here.
That's interesting.
So I don't like to see that error. It's like a text. It's basically a
Parser thing.
yeah.
Right?
It's a text parser thing. It'll still run technically, but it's trying to understand how this grouping of these 3 tiles makes sense in figuring out the text. So when you have them when you put them in parentheses, it's saying evaluate this entire thing instead of what it's trying to do is evaluate each of these tiles separately, something along those lines. So by doing this, it's just not throwing up that error anymore, even though it should run actually, even if you don't have that.
That's kind of just a good general suggestion, I think. Like if you're running into things where you know your syntax should be evaluating correctly, but you're still getting that like yellow flag or whatever. Sometimes just playing around with with parentheses and forcing like the order of operations that you want will help it understand it better. So that's like a perfect example here. There's a couple things with like leaderboards in the past, same thing, but
yeah.
Yep.
Then simply the worth of the item is just equal to this. I set within the item this number variable that I call worth. So like you could really easily do item 1 defense is equal to, then I might call another number variable that I call defense inside that object. But I don't have that set, so we'll just instead go back to worth.
But that's like how you would start allowing separate inventory items to like affect your
exactly
current stats.
And then you can just So you can then display these in different ways. Like what I'm setting here is like when you have we now have a text variable or a number variable. These stuff are things that you can then display. So let's go all the way down, all the way through these lines, and let's show how I'm displaying this stuff. So item 1, the image, I'm just displaying it. The interesting thing is when you're displaying an image as a text variable, the size of that image actually gets affected by the font size you set for it. So if you set small font, so let's like just set this to small font, and let's look at the first image. We got like super tiny eagle helmet.
This is interesting. I've never seen this before.
And then if you
but you're calling a
then we go back to like extra large font.
Okay.
And then it's back to its bigger size.
That's a text variable you're saying to display.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but it'll display the image of that object?
Yeah, I'm setting the image of this object by just saying this global object variable that automatically pulls in the image of the thing I'm referencing is equal to this text variable. And then, so how like font sizes, I believe how they work from what I've figured out from this is they're just applying a scale to that item.
Mm-hmm.
So they're applying a default scale to it. So by choosing this, I'm just changing the default scale of whatever that text variable is. So therefore, I'm changing the scale of that image. Now the only downfall of doing it this way is you can't. There's like really no great way to get it higher or larger than this extra large font size.
Yeah. I mean, you would be able to do this differently, right? You'd be able to say display the object, like you would make an object variable of like item 1 in it, or you'd call it whatever.
Right. You could just simply...
you just display global item 1,
yep,
right? And then
exactly.
That's how I would think about doing it, and then you could use scale to make it as big or small as you want.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I would do is instead of calling this text variable, I would call the object variable itself. But I enjoy calling a text variable because I can do some nice things with actually setting its size with fonts and such. And then also it's like you can actually I find an easier time of keeping the sizes consistent that way.
Mm-hmm.
And Mescat brings up a good point. When you use icons through text variables like that, you can also set their size with setting another text in addition to this, where it'd be like this plus size equals 200. And actually, I think it's better to put it at the front. So like,
size 200 gonna work? I thought it starts freaking out after you get to a certain size.
Let's see. Bam.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's how you can actually. That is how you can change that up. But I don't need to really worry about that right here. Now the selection, that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. But all you need to know is I'm just displaying these text variables that I'm creating here. So I'm displaying the image, then I'm displaying the actual name of the item at a certain screen position, and then I am displaying its worth at a further along screen position. Okay. So now we have our items, but we have no way of actually going through our items. So that's the next thing I'm going to talk through. How do you select your items? So let's go back over here to our. This is our inventory selection. We'll go over to our active page. The next thing we want to do is when started to left stick down direction, then we are going to have this variable that I am calling selection, and I'm increasing that by 1 point. And then when left stick has been hit in the up direction, then selection goes up by goes down by 1 point, not up by 2 points. Then I want my selection to start at number 1, so let's go here and let's just say on the first page selection equals 1. Cool. So what is this selection thing? This is allowing you to go through the items and select them. I find this is actually the best way to get through items is by saying start a 2 left stick in like the up or down direction. If you just do left stick down, if you
like
hold down on it, then it'll go like super fast down because it's like every single frame it's going down. So by doing this, then you can kind of clamp it down to just happening 1 frame.
Mm-hmm.
Go over to back to our UI right here, and then I simply have it for the name of that item. I say that basically when it's been selected, so like item 1 is also going to be selection number 1 because it's item 1 would be the first item on the list, item 2 would be the second item on the list, item 3 would be the third, item 4 would be the fourth. So when the selection in this inventory manager, which I'm going to update right now, is equal to 1, that's the first item. That means this first item, it's now displayed in the color orange. If it's not equal to 1, if the selection number variable in this inventory is not equal to 1, then it's just displayed in the normal white color. So orange means it's selected. You want something to show what's currently being selected. And I just do this for all of them. So for the second item, when the inventory selection is equal to 2, then it's orange. When selection is equal to 3, then item 3 is equal to orange. And when selection is equal to 4, then the fourth item, their text is colored orange as well. All right, so what happens if we go there? If we just do that. So we go in, we have this, it's nice, but I'm on the fourth one, I go down, and then it's just gone. I can hit up a few times, right? And then I'll finally get back to it. Because what it's doing is it's increasing past the number 4. So then we simply use something that people should use more often because it's awesome, our clamping. So what do clamps look like? Clamps will basically constrain a number variable or whatever within a range of 2 numbers, a low number and a high number. You can't go outside of those 2 numbers. It's really, really useful in a lot of scenarios. So what you do is you set right here of a number variable. So I go over to my math, go to functions, go to clamp, and then I set a minimum of 1, because I want to start at 1, maximum of 4, because I only have 4 items in this example, but you maybe have an inventory that has 10 items. And the last thing is it needs to understand what it's actually clamping. So even though you're saying that this number variable equals a clamp of these things, you need to add the number variable at the end or somewhere in there so it knows that, all right, it's kind of resetting this number variable to mean like a clamp of itself, basically. So now we go back in, we go to test, and we go through, and I get down number 4, can't go further down, go up to number 1, can't go further up, so I'm kind of stuck in here. All right, so the last thing is I want to hit these, and I want, like I'm pressing A, and I want them to appear on my character here. That's the last thing. So the first thing I want to do is in my page right here, then my active page, I want to say that when A then pressed, something happens. So I'm going to base this all on what's currently being selected. So when selection is equal to 1, then that means I'm on my global item 1. I want to toggle a Boolean within that item. I went through a lot of different ways to do this, and I found that basically putting the code for like how that item is previewed in that actual item itself, it just allows you to set the exact position you want that item to appear in. It's just much simpler this way.
So it will be unique, right, between
Yeah.
each of them. So that kind of makes sense.
Because a helmet, you want to go on the head, you want to go just the right point of the head. You want a sword to go on their hand, just the right point. You want chest plate to go and be attached to their chest, and you want that to be set within that object itself, rather than trying to set a default, because certain objects, might look better on a different part of a person's body. So if what I'm saying doesn't make much sense to you, I'm going to be showing you exactly what I mean in just a sec anyways. All right, so what I'm doing is basically, when A is pressed, whatever is being selected, that item, something happens to that item. And again, these items are being set on the first page as equal to this in-world item. Now, this is not the ideal way to do it, obviously, because you want these to be equal to something eventually that is in your player's inventory. So you go over to objects and you have this nice inventory thing where you can look at sort of their inventory and then pull stuff that's within there. That's going to be for part 2. For now, we're just custom setting these 4 items this way. So whatever items are being set, you actually don't want them to be templates. This is like a time where it's nice to not have them as templates. And I actually, so like that's why you'll see these 4 items aren't templates. When an item is in your inventory, like you've picked it up and it's in your inventory, it's not going to be a template either. So I figured this would be the best way to do it. All right, so let's go over to our four items here. And let's just create another version of this sharp pointy thing. All right, so let's just start it here. So remember we had the worth of our items that we were looking for, how much gold they were worth. We had that right there. So first thing is, you'll notice this is not a template. See, template equals false. And what I'm doing is, when I've selected I want this item to be previewed, then I want something to happen. So the first thing is, I like to set all my items to be equivalent to different parts of the body. So what do I mean by that? So let's start with this sword. I created an object set called weapons, and I'm going to add this sword to that object set. This will become useful later on. Then we want to start here. Okay. So let's go back just to review again. We have our inventory manager, and what it's saying is, all right, so what is the sword is item number 4. Okay, so we'll just change it to this new version of the sword, this blank guy. So when the selection is equal to 4, then global item 4, its preview is toggled on or off. So we know item 4 is equal to the sword right here. So we want stuff to happen when preview has been turned on inside of here. We want stuff to happen when preview has been turned off inside of here. So I actually am going to start with no longer preview, where we are just going to destroy the created objects of this object. Because even though this object is not set as a template, we are going to act as it's like a template.
This is interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of a
created objects tile is not put down very often.
I know, exactly. So, all right, when started to preview. This means that this item, I have selected this item, and I want to display this item now. The first thing I want to do is, if I have any other weapons, I want to get rid of those, because I don't want to preview myself holding 2 swords in the same hand, because that looks glitchy. So we want to say, for each of weapons, or its global weapons, minus me, then we are going to just say that its preview is equal to false. So this just makes it so that any other weapon currently, as soon as this weapon has decided that, all right, I'm going to display this weapon, very first thing it does, looks through everything else that's a weapon besides this thing, and then it destroys it. Well, it destroys it if it's been created. So the next thing we want to do, so let's just go over. I need to reference this again. I'm just going to copy this so I remember. Okay. So we then want to create a version of this. I'm going to create actually a new variable. I'm going to call preview mode. And then this is going to create itself. Cool. All right, so this thing's been created. Now I want to set its position, attach it, and then set its placement on the character. So let's just, before I go any further, let's just run this. So you can see what we've done. All right, so go to sharp pointy thing, hit it, nothing happens. That's because its position has not been set to my preview character yet. So the next thing you want to do is you've created this, but you now need to set its position in relative to the player. So we first want to say that its position is equal to the let's see, global player preview. Oh, right. You know one other thing I didn't do, which you should do? This preview player, I don't want him to be collidable. Because then if I have lots of attachments on him and he's collidable, it can start to get funky. So I'm actually going to say, right here, I'm just going to add in global player preview. Let's see, collidable, I believe, is that under physics? Yeah, that's right. Collidable equals false.
There you go.
So yeah, global player preview collidable equals false. Cool.
Would you be setting like the items that you're putting onto them collidable to false as well, or since he's off, you don't really
Yeah,
need to?
I don't think you need to worry about that too much.
Only if you started to have a bunch of objects that they would start hitting each other, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. All right, so this position of this thing equals global players. Go to his socket, and we're going to set his right hand position. All right, so now I've set this little sword to be in the position of the player's hand. Go into test, go over, create a sharp pointy thing, and yeah, it kind of created it, but didn't really do what it wanted to. Just created it and dropped. Because you need to attach it to the player too. So you want to go to object. I want to go and say attach. Oh, whoops. Wrong syntax. All right, I want to say that global... okay, global player preview attaches this object. Preview mode, maybe that's too confusing. Let's call this, what's the least confusing? Preview object?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's definitely going to be an object variable, so you're calling it
temp object? I don't know. People in chat, tell us what's the best thing to call this that makes the most sense. I'm just going to call it preview object for now.
I like that. If chat tells us that's terrible, we can update it.
Because preview mode just kind of confused me.
It sounds more like a Boolean of like
Yeah.
setting like you're now in this state versus like an actual like object variable.
Right, exactly. Then I want to attach it to his right hand.
Preview item or object.
Okay.
Or funky pants.
Funky pants? That's true. We could call it that. All right. So now this object's position is equal to my player's right hand position, and it's also being attached to my player is attaching it to their right hand. Jump into test and go here. Hit it. Bam. Looks not too bad, but oops, didn't mean to hit that. Do there, and whoa.
That looks like that hurts.
Yeah, that might not be the best way to display things. So what you need to also set is its position, so that no matter like how your character is rotated, its position is correctly on that character's position. So what did I just set here? I just need to reference what the right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So then you need to just end with setting the
orientation, right, of your
yeah, exactly.
preview object.
So preview objects orientation, so that it goes in directions, and we're going to say its up is equal to the global player's forward position. Why that? Because select this thing, go here. So up is the very tippy of this, so the tippy top of that, and you want the tip of it to be pointed in the same direction as the player is facing forward. All right, so we do this now, sharp pointy thing, nice. So we're rotated a bit, and we hit it again, and now it is correctly oriented with my player, so no matter where they're rotated, it just always appears in the right place. So like we rotate them here, and bam, it's in the right place. So perfect, our very first item, and then I hit A again to just remove it. And really what I did is I just did the same exact thing to this with each of the other items. So I have my rusty chest plate. And actually I can get rid of this guy now. He is no longer necessary. So I have my rusty chest plate, I have my eagle helmet, and I have my bucket head. So my rusty chest plate, it is a chest piece. So the only difference here is I made this part of a object set called global chest. And then when something else is attached to its chest, something else that would go on their chest, then that would be deleted. So it's in a different, the other one was weapons, this one is chest. And then the exact same thing, I just attached it to the player's back side. I made its forward equal the player's forward. And then, you know, when it's no longer previewed, then all of the created versions of this are destroyed. So that's what basically this last line does. When no longer preview, destroy created objects. So right here, we say that like we're creating a version of itself. So we get this nice object set where it's storing everything that's ever been created, and then you can access that. And I'm accessing that by destroying them all. Last thing to show is, so I had an initial problem with my eagle helmet. I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's just ignore this line. All right, so let's just go in here and let's go to my eagle helmet, and that's not exactly where his helmet needs to be.
Although that looks like not a bad match.
Actually, that looks
piece. Yeah.
that looks really cool.
I know.
Okay, I didn't think about that. That looks super cool. So the real benefit of doing things this way, and in every single item setting what this preview mode of that item looks like, is you can then set like exactly its position on your character so that it looks nice. So what I found is, all right, that helmet needs to be higher on the character. So I went back and said that its position, initially I just had its position equals the player's head position. Well, I needed to be higher than the head position. So I just added, all right, it equals its head position plus, we're going to add in here going into position, say world up, multiplied by, 0.15 meters. So what this does is this brings it up in the world 0.15 meters. So it's attached to its head plus 0.15 meters. Go back into test mode. And that was enough to align it properly with his head. So by doing that, you can then kind of set the exact placement you want of items on your character. So that can make it so you can have a squirrel as a hat. I have a bucket as a hat, which I had to mess around with its forward and its up to get it the right position. But this gives you the flexibility to set something to be the exact right place on your character.
Yeah. So I had a question. Is it like the orientation that each object gets set in regards to your character? So like right with the sword, it was like forward to me. Is that in each object it's getting set? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
So in every object, every single object will need the following things in order to be spawned. First, it needs to set that anything else that is part of its object set of like items that are on that piece of body part, it needs to set all of those to false, to have a preview as false, so they're all destroyed. It needs to create a version of itself. It needs to set its position, so that's like actually the next thing here. It needs to set where its position is, which would be on the player's backside for this object. It then needs to attach itself to the player, and it should attach to a socket that makes sense on the player, so it's attaching to this player's backside socket. And then after that, it needs to say where its forward-facing position is.
Gotcha.
So you need all of these things in each object. And yes, it is, you are looking at setting within each object. Well, these two things are just the same line copied kind of again and again, but you're setting 3 positions or 3 positional type things in every single object. So it does require a tiny bit more work per object, but it gives you the flexibility for every single object to set exactly its placement on a character, exactly what it attaches to, so you can really take any item and affix it to any single point on your player.
Mm-hmm.
And that about does it. I think we're right at the hour mark.
Wow, we could have timed that better if we tried. I think.
So there we go. This is kind of the nice way of creating your inventory system. Like this is I always wanted to create an inventory system that was sort of like all of the best RPGs out there, like Oblivion, Dragon Age. I think even Destiny lets you do this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think like most things let you do this.
Yeah, where you can preview it beforehand.
So I think that'll do it. This is part 1. Part 1 is just beautification. Part 2 is actually taking these things and making it so that once I've attached this stuff, then I go out and I have those equipped to myself. Mm-hmm. That'll be another time.
Yeah. I think one thing we should clarify just before we sneak away, though, is just the difference between like using this and the props versus like Character Studio, right?
Yeah.
So, for usually like an edit mode, right, when you want to just like swap out clothing, things like that, you use your Character Studio. You're not able, in game right now to like call Character Studio from code, so it makes doing something like this in a play experience harder to do, where you switch out like a peasant tunic for a scoundrel cloak or what have you. You would actually have to do different models of a character.
Yep. And
replace them out, which can be done, and I've seen it be done. It's a different way of doing it and can get pretty complicated as you like want to swap out multiple different things, because you have to have like different versions of each, basically. But you would be able to do it and incorporate it into a system like this, but it would just be a little bit more work on your part for sure.
Yeah, so I can quickly show you that here. You would probably, so this guy, you want to hide him somewhere, and then you would actually want to, all right, so we're gonna, instead of rusty chest plate, it's gonna be him, armor plate. So, rusty chestplate. Item 2 is now going to become this guy. Where is he?
Right there.
There you go. All right, cool. So it's now this guy, but I want to still display my armor, my rusty chestplate right here. So let's go into this UI, and instead, so that was item 2. So the item 2 image equals, instead of this, you're just going to say it equals, believe it should be Codium Golem. Sweet.
Okay.
All right, so that creates that. Now, in my character, let's just delete all this stuff. Let's copy this page. And it's part of the chest, creates itself. Okay, so I instead will want to say,
And the trick is he's actually replacing the other guy, right?
right. So I would have to do a few extra things.
Wouldn't the easiest, this is like in my mind, like actually the easiest thing to do would be able to actually take your old player and just like make him invisible and like have this guy like directly like on top.
Oh yeah, that would actually
Because then he still has, if you have like other attachments on him, they'll actually just be like a layer on top.
Yeah, that should work. Okay, let's try this. Visible equals false. So equals gold player, and then I should just be able. I'm still actually going to attach him to the main player.
That works. Yeah, you'll continue to have him rotate around then with this.
Yeah,
same way.
exactly. So attach to socket, and we're going to say the socket we're attaching him to is the position. Whole player attach selected to socket. What else do we need to do? We should probably set this guy to be non-collidable. And let's see what else I need to do here, but I'm just going to run into test now. So let's go to armor plate, and bam! Yeah, it worked pretty well, actually. Whoa. Oh, right. I need to set a special extra thing in here. When no longer previewed. Then I also make the global player preview visible back to equal to true. Look at this. All right, go to armor plate. Bam.
So now let's try. So if you put on the armor plate, yep. But what it did is actually switch the model out.
Yeah. It's not perfect. I would probably spend a bit more time reattaching everything to this new model, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Actually.
Oh, if you just set the pace the same.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just going to set his pace to be equal to 0. Wait, I think just 0. All right, no, I don't.
Or you had 0.001.
Yeah. Then go in here.
I mean, yeah, this actually works pretty good.
Yeah, it does. So look at that.
Create your game as you play? Any Spark can do it. Spark, activate the portals.